key points that they've made this morning, or interacting from each other. And then I will move to our very distinguished panelists as well. But President Ouattara, anything you would like to add to your 10 points that you set out so clearly today?
Je remercie Madame l'Administrateur. Je pense que j'ai assez parlé. Je vous ai déjà lu les discours que avait rédigé le Premier ministre. On m'a dit que c'était un discours qui a abordé la plupart des points, donc je ne voudrais pas, sans pour insister et dire que en réalité, comme je l'ai dit, l'émergence est un Pleniere et on va tenir ce plan aussi. C'est extrêmement important. Les pays en Afrique sont déjà émergents, ce qui nous gratifie, ceux d'entre nous qui voulons parvenir à cette émergence en 2020 où j'ai comme Macky-Sall plus les 5. Voilà. Et donc on a gagné 10 ans. Par conséquent, il faut donc y croire, il faut y travailler. Et je voudrais surtout laisser donc l'opportunité aux autres panélistes point de vue et remercier les responsables des différents États, différentes institutions qui ont fait le déplacement d'Abidjan pour venir nous soutenir et nous éclairer. Je vous remercie, Madame l'Administrateur.
Thank you, President Macky Sall. Your country is on a race to the future with emergence. Would you like to any President Ouattara?
Je voudrais à la suite du président Ouattara entendre plutôt le récit des pays qui ont déjà fait le chemin de l'émergence. Nous avons ici la Chine, nous avons la Malaisie, nous avons l'Afrique, le parti de BRICS. Il serait indiqué pour nous d'entendre le success story de ces pays qui ont connu aussi la pauvreté, qui ont connu parfois la guerre, et qui se sont battus au fil des années, qui ont fini par réussir l'émergence et la gouvernance. Qui a comme corollaire l'état de droit. C'est un réussir l'émergence. Heureusement, on est sur la rampe de lancement. Aujourd'hui, la convoitise de toutes les forces de destruction. Ce qui fait que nous avons un défi nouveau qui se pose, l'objectif de développement du monde, que les partenaires prennent sécurité, paix et stabilité comme une dimension indispensable pour la réalisation de l'émergence. C'est une bonne nouvelle pour nous et il faudra faire face en toutes circonstances pour que l'Afrique continue sa marche vers le développement et puisse lutter contre le terrorisme, contre les déstabilisations qui se posent à notre niveau. Donc pour le reste, je pense qu'on pourra revenir sur le panel. La dimension sécurité, paix et développement, la gouvernance, mais aussi les réformes. Les réformes économiques, les réformes dans le fonctionnement de nos administrations, il faut faire face, puisqu'on ne peut pas avoir l'ambition d'une émergence et vouloir rester d'un autre âge. Donc, il y a une transformation de mentalité qui doit être les politiques d'émergence, et je pense que c'est là où nous avons le plus de difficultés, puisqu'il faut changer de paradigme. Alors, les gens, ils veulent rester sur des acquis qu'ils ne peuvent peut-être pas prospérer si nous voulons élargir la redistribution, réduire les inégalités sociales. Il faut donc que ceux qui sont aujourd'hui privilégiés acceptent le principe de la solidarité, ce qui pourrait, en tout cas, se traduire non pas par une réduction de leurs acquis, mais par, en tout cas, une limitation de la prélection des avantages pour la attendre, alors qu'il faudrait être solidaire comme
Thank you, Mr. President. Could I come to President Thabo Mbeki, who has led South Africa, a powerhouse of the region. Thabo, if you would like to come in at this point.
I'm going to delegate to you. Okay. We just negotiated an agreement here that I've delegated this task to him. Can you do that?
President Mbeki is a very experienced negotiator. We see him negotiating many things, so I'm going to accept his negotiation and call on the Vice Foreign Minister of China. I think everyone is very familiar with the China story. China has had the most phenomenal movement outside of poverty that humankind has ever seen. Decades, hundreds of millions of people. Can we hear from you?
Thank you, Madam, and thank you, and Your Excellency. Your Excellency Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Côte, Your Excellency MaktharDiop, President of the Republic, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Well, it gives me great pleasure to be here to attend the discussion today. And I wish to extend on behalf of the Chinese government warm congratulations on the convening of the conference and appreciation for the thoughtful preparations and arrangements by the government of Côte d'Ivoire and UNDP. And I'm here as a partner rather than a lecturer. I'd like to focus on China-Africa partnership to share on the emergence of Africa. And also I'm here as a learner to learn about Iran has made such great achievements in your economic growth. 9% growth rate in the past 3 years constantly. And Mr. President, I must confess, you have left China far behind. Well, in the last few years, I paid visits to Africa, which took me to almost all corners of the continent, and enabled me to see changes and make discoveries firsthand. Today's effort is a land gaining and vitality. The number of expanding network of highways, bustling streets, cleaner drinking water, better medical services, longer average life expectancy, more students in classrooms, mothers beaming with happiness, and the eyes of children sparkling with hope. And also more serious suffering from heavier traffic jam because of the increasing numbers of vehicles and private cars running all around in almost all the African cities and towns. And such scenes remind early years of China's reform and opening up course, and the expectations for a better future for Africa. However, just as human history progresses amidst the twists and turns, Africa's journey of revitalization has not been smooth sailing and is confronted with multiple challenges. Africa remains the most underdeveloped continent in the world, with a weak foundation for sustainable development and the daunting task of meeting the Millennium Development Goals. As Africa's good partner, friend, and brother, China rejoices the Africa's promising future and empathizes with Africa's difficulties in development. Looking back in the 1950s and the 60s, when China itself was faced with extreme resistance in pursuing national independence and political liberation. Looking ahead, in this new historical period, China will continue to support African countries in pursuing economic liberation, so that Africa's independence is rooted in a stable footing. China has the political commitment to support Africa. In 2013, my President, Mr. Xi Jinping, came to Africa on his first foreign trip as the head of state. He's laid down the principles for China's engagement in Africa, namely sincerity, real results, affinity, and good faith. The guideline of upholding principles and pursuing shared interests, which is sent a powerful signal of China's enduring commitment to valuing friendship with Africa and support development. Last year, my Premier, Mr. Li Keqiang, also visited Africa, put forward principles for 6 major areas of China-Africa cooperation, as well as the building of 3 major networks: a network of high-speed railway, a network of expressway, a regional aviation network, and painting a broad blueprint for cooperation between the 2 sides. China also has the rich experience which may serve as a reference for Africa. Back in China, we started from the North China, which was weak and poor, and turned the country into a land of initial prosperity and great development opportunities. This is a leapfrog of the traditional pathway for national development, during which we gained a rich governance experience on economic, political, social, ecological, and other fronts, and moved even closer to realizing the Chinese dream of great national renewal. we have not only fed 22% of the world's population with less than 9% of its arable land, but also significantly improved the Chinese people's lives. So all the experience can be shared with the fellow developing countries. Both China and Africa belong to the developing world. We have a similar historical experience, development goals and their visions. China's experience as well as lessons can be highly relevant and useful for Africa. China has the capability to help Africa realize its dream together with the international community. As the second largest economy, China has full-fledged industrial engineering, construction capacities, quality of affordable equipment, and a relatively these are exactly what is needed in Africa. Stimulus for the practical and natural liberation just every 1 percentage point in China's GDP. China is in 0.3% low income. A study of IMF also shows that the China-Africa cooperation contributed 20% to African economic growth. Sustained medium-high level growth policy will be propelling continued growth of China has always been a firm supporter, promoter of and participant in African development and prosperity. Since 2006, China quadrupled its assistance to Africa, trained over 60,000 Africans in various fields and built malls and value related to people's welfare and development. At the same time, China has received from its expecting more and support from. I was honored the day before yesterday to meet His Excellency President Ouattara. I congratulated His Excellency and soccer on to the soccer which has been a big headache for my people. I believe, Mr. President, China will be a real emerging power and assist and the success. As a Chinese saying goes, a gentleman should be true to his commitment and honor his commitment with the concrete actions. This has long been a principle guiding the conduct of Chinese people. Honor its commitment to Africa, which with the concrete and the real efforts. Here, let me give you an example, which happened not long ago in Africa. That is the story of China's assistance for Africa in fighting Ebola. After the outbreak of the epidemic, China was the first to send the chartered flight carrying aids to the affected countries, prompting the following assistance of the international community to Africa. So far, China has provided aids worth 750 million yuan and deployed nearly 1,000 medical workers. Apart from the three most severely affected countries, China also provided aids to Cote d'Ivoire and the other 9 countries in the neighborhood. These efforts have helped to stop epidemic an important component of the cross-border transmission and the end of the outbreak. Some may ask and provide such support to Africa. My answer is that, firstly, it's because of the profound friendship China has with Africa over the past years and more. And secondly, it is because of the greater convergence of interests and the shared destiny between the two sides. Although far apart geographically, China and Africa have been brought together by similar interests and the common pursuit of national peace and development. We understand that in today's world of ours, when Africa prospers, China will prosper, and the whole world will prosper. If Africa falls ill, China will feel the pain, and the whole world will have to take pills. China will, so that is why China has always put Africa high on its agenda. This is a long-term policy underpinning China's diplomacy. Then one might ask further how China helps. China will continue to uphold the principles of sincerity, friendship, equality, and mutual benefit, win-win cooperation, and common development, and focus on the following areas. First, we will give full play to the role of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, and take concrete steps to bring tangible benefits to Africa's development. 2015 is an important year. This year marked the 15th anniversary of the founding of FOCAC, and the 6th ministerial conference of the FOCAC will be held in South Africa in this year. China will take the conference as the opportunity to introduce new measures for China-Africa cooperation over the next 3 years in accordance with Africa's needs and aspirations, as well as China's advantages and capability to assist Africa in its endeavor to eliminate poverty and achieve its development goals. Second, we will share experience on governance and support Africa following its own development path. Many of our foreign friends are very curious about the secret of China's success. Actually, there is only one reason behind the quantum leap the Chinese nation has made from standing up to becoming strong. That is, we have stayed committed to a development path suited to our national conditions. We stand ready to further share with countries our hard-won experience in promoting economic growth and social progress, and continue more and contribute more Chinese wisdom, Chinese plans, and Chinese ideas for Africa's development, and help African countries to blaze an effective development path suited to their international conditions. Third, we will advance cooperation with Africa in building infrastructure and production capacity to promote Africa's economic takeoff. Right now, China is going through economic transformation and industrial upgrading, which gives a strong boost for many Chinese competitive industries to go global. Last year, China's outbound investment exceeded $100 billion, while Africa is accelerating industrialization and is in great need of infrastructure, capital, technology, industrial equipment, and management expertise, which make Africa an attractive destination for China's relocated industries. This provides an enormous potential and broad prospects for China and Africa to cooperate in infrastructure development and forge industrial complementarity. So not long ago, the Chinese government and the African Union signed the MOU on the promotion of cooperating road, regional aviation networks, and industrialization fields. China will actively Agenda 2016 adopted by the 24th Meet, which draws for Africa's development over the next 50 years. We will place greater emphasis on sharing with Africa how to rather than giving fish, and help Africa to build nest to attract phoenixes to speak. We will encourage and economic company to make cooperation on production capacity a new highlight in China-Africa cooperation, and help Africa advance industrialization and achieve economic takeoff. Fourth, we will be more active in playing a constructive role in Africa's peace and security affairs to help foster an enabling environment for Africa in development. Experience of China and other countries shows that without peace and stability, there can be no development. The political situation in Africa is stable, but in some areas, maintaining peace and stability remains a serious challenge. China will continue to deepen cooperation on peace and security with the AU and African countries, be more active in taking a constructive part in resolving the hotspot issues in Africa, and increase its support for African countries to address issues in the region. We are confident that with its growing capacity in maintaining peace and security independently, Africa will be able to maintain political and social stability and long-term security and realize sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, globalization has turned the world into a global village where no country can achieve development in isolation. And the common development can be realized only through cooperation. China's development is closely linked with that of Africa. And global prosperity is impossible of Africa will light up our planet home. To help and support Africa is the due responsibility and obligation of the international community. We call upon the international community to work together to further increase assistance and the investment in Africa, honor its commitment to Africa, and help Africa translate its potential strength in resources and human capital into real development advantages. As one of the cradles of human civilization, Africa has a glorious history. As now Africans to walk fast, walk alone. If we want to walk far, walk together. We are convinced that with the efforts of the African people and the assistance of the international community, this ancient land will realize its prosperity and revitalization and embrace a splendid new future. I wish the conference a complete success. Thank you. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister, for that important statement around China's long-term commitment on South-South cooperation to the continent across training, infrastructure, investments, exchange of information. And having just recently been in the 3 neighbouring countries affected by Ebola, I can say that China has done an outstanding job through its health workers there and the Ebola treatment units, and everyone's indebted to you for that solidarity. So thank you so much. I'm going to come to the other side of the podium now and come to our colleague MaktharDiop, the Vice President for African Region of the World Bank. And Makhtar, invite you to say a little about the bank's support for African emergence.
Thank you very much. Excusez-moi. Merci beaucoup. Je vais pas parler de la Banque mondiale en tant que telle. Je vais parler plutôt de ce que les pays africains font. Tout d'abord, j'ai été, lorsque le président Ouattara, mon ancien patron, a parlé de 10 points sur l'émergence, j'étais un peu confus parce qu'il correspondait exactement à ce que j'avais en tête. Donc je crois que j'ai été, Monsieur le Président, peut-être un bon élève, comme c'est ce qui mon patron. Je souhaiterais peut-être mettre les principes qui ont été évoqués par le président Ouattara dans son allocution sont très clairs. Les 10 points, pour moi, recouvrent l'ensemble des enjeux. Peut-être voir maintenant comment avancer en pratique sur ces enjeux. Et je commencerai par la question du risque. Un des problèmes un des progrès que les pays émergents ont réussi à faire, c'est que la perception du risque a diminué de manière significative durant cette période de transition. Des pays qui les considéraient comme des destinations risquées d'investissement, où le marché avait un premium, le risque premium qui était très élevé au niveau du financement, ont, au cours du temps, réduit cette perception du risque, et ce qui a fait que le coût du financement était moins cher, que les investissements sont arrivés. En Afrique, on a encore une grande perception qui est beaucoup plus tôt. Comment réduire cette perception du risque est vraiment important pour une transition vers l'émergence. La seconde, c'est que quand on a une croissance qui est basée sur l'accumulation des facteurs, comme le président Ouattara l'a dit, cela, à un moment, a des limites. On arrive à un point où on a atteint les limites et il faut accélérer la productivité de nos économies. Et c'est le défi que nous avons. Pour augmenter la productivité de nos économies, il faut investir sur les deux facteurs qui sont le facteur capital-travail. Aussi bien au niveau de ces deux facteurs, nous avons des retards. Et je voudrais m'appesantir sur un aspect particulier qui est celui de l'énergie. Tous les pays émergents ont réglé la question de l'énergie à un point ou à un autre, en la mettant de manière disponible et à un coût bas. Aujourd'hui, la même conversation aurait été tenue il y a 3 ans. Nous avons eu une discussion sur la volonté du secteur privé d'investir dans l'énergie. Aujourd'hui, je viens de Genève, où le Premier ministre a dirigé une délégation ivoirienne. Il y a une volonté énorme des investisseurs privés d'investir dans la production. Qu'est-ce qui les retient? C'est la qualité des entreprises de distribution. Ils nous disent tous, je suis prêt à investir dans la production, mais il faudrait une meilleure gouvernance dans les entreprises de distribution, il faudrait avoir une meilleure efficacité dans ces entreprises de distribution, et nous, on est prêt à investir, à vous aider à faire les progrès qu'il faut. Donc, je crois qu'une question concrète et pratique, c'est comment faire dans le continent pour que nos entreprises de distribution d'électricité soient à part avec ce qui se passe dans le reste du monde et puissent avoir des niveaux de performance. Nous avons réussi à le faire en Afrique dans le secteur de la télécommunication. Nous avons réussi à le faire plus ou moins dans le secteur de l'eau. Le secteur de l'énergie est celui qui, aujourd'hui, constitue un obstacle important pour nous permettre de faire ce progrès. Cela permettra également d'avoir des meilleures interactions. Il y a de grands projets aujourd'hui, que ce soit Inga, que ce soit Swapiti Kaleta, que ce soit le Lampanga, que ce soit d'autres projets de cette nature hydro, qui pourraient générer assez d'électricité pour l'Afrique à un coût très bas, mais qui aujourd'hui ne peuvent pas être exploités parce qu'ils n'ont pas l'interconnectivité. Et ceci sont des pas très importants pour la politique de l'intégration régionale. Le deuxième élément, c'est l'investissement dans le capital humain, et particulièrement dans l'éducation. Les pays africains ont fait des progrès énormes en termes d'accès à l'enseignement supérieur, de l'enseignement général, secondaire et supérieur et primaire, mais nous avons des problèmes sur la qualité de cette éducation. Et cela exige bien sûr des réformes importantes qui exigent un consensus au niveau social et au niveau national. Je viens de Chine. En Chine, il y a 1 mois et demi de cela. La Chine investit à 40% de ces universitaires, des gens qui sont du secteur universitaire, qui sont formés dans les sciences, technologies et mathématiques. L'Afrique n'en produit que 20%. Nous ne pouvons pas augmenter la valeur ajoutée avant cette volonté de transformer nos économies si nous ne formons pas plus de scientifiques, nous ne formons pas plus d'ingénieurs, plus de mathématiciens, plus de techniciens. Donc, les pays africains font des réformes. Le président Macky Sall est en train de le faire au Sénégal en essayant de réformer, de donner plus un contenu scientifique plus important dans l'enseignement, de Yamoussoukro. Ce sont des réformes qui doivent accélérer, généraliser le continent si nous voulons augmenter ce travail et la rendre plus. Troisièmement, la transformation de l'économie, ça se fait dans la durée. Et je crois que nous, institutions comme la Banque mondiale, nous commençons à l'apprendre. Les réformes prennent du temps à mettre en œuvre et les fruits sont les fruits qui sont obtenus sur le long terme. Mais est-ce que cela veut dire qu'il faut aller doucement, lentement et attendre que ces réformes portent leurs fruits? Non, il y a la possibilité d'accélérer cet effort. Et pour ce faire, un des obstacles importants, c'est l'efficacité de notre administration dans le pays. L'administration, quand on compare tous ces pays émergents, ils ont une administration extrêmement efficace, rapide, bien benchmarkée sur le reste du monde, où les décisions qui sont prises par l'administration sont claires et peuvent permettre aux investisseurs privés de prendre des décisions très rapides. Dans le pays, nous avons encore des efforts à faire pour pouvoir arriver à un niveau qui soit de ces pays. Le quatrième élément, c'est la question du secteur privé national. Pays émergent sans l'existence d'un secteur privé national fort et bien développé. Et je crois que également, au niveau de la Banque mondiale, c'est quelque chose que nous apprenons et que nous commençons à intérioriser encore beaucoup plus. Il est clair qu'en Amérique latine, où j'ai séjourné, où j'ai travaillé, que ce soit en Asie, que ce soit en Europe, le secteur privé de ces pays est très fort. Dans le pays, je crois qu'il y a encore des efforts que nous pouvons faire dans les politiques pour pouvoir créer des conditions pour que le secteur privé de notre pays puisse investir dans les secteurs à long terme, qui puissent aider à créer des emplois, qui puissent créer la valeur ajoutée. Dernier point, qui est lié à la chaîne des valeurs. Quand on parle d'émergence et de compétitivité sur le marché international, il faut que le marché soit lié. En Chine, tout n'est pas produit en Chine. Les mobile phones qui sont produits en Chine reçoivent des puces qui viennent du Japon, et ces puces ont des éléments qui sont eux-mêmes construits en Chine. Donc, en Afrique, ce qui se passe, c'est que nous n'avons pas ces mouvements entre pays qui permettent de niveau de spécialisation et de productivité et d'efficacité qui nous permettent de compétir avec les autres pays émergents. Donc, c'est important que tous les efforts d'intégration régionale puissent permettre à ce que spécialisé dans un même bien, mais qui ait aucun valeur ajoutée sur le continent et qui soit compétitif sur le reste du monde. Je vais m'en arrêter là pour des questions de temps, mais je voulais juste mettre l'accent sur ces points, Excellence, parce que je crois que vous avez, dans les 10 points que vous avez annoncés, fait une liste qui était très exhaustive. Merci.
Thank you very much. Let's bring in now Minister Idris Jallow of Malaysia, who leads Malaysia's performance management and delivery activity on behalf of the Prime Minister. Malaysia, well known, I think, on this continent for its emphasis on key results and prioritisation as it continues its economic journey, and it's now a high middle income country and with aspirations to emerge to developed country status in the near term, shall we say. So please, Minister, share some experiences with us.
Thank you. For countries to emerge, I believe, from low income to middle income, for countries to emerge from middle income to high income. We did some work in Malaysia, and we kind of felt that for them to achieve that, all those countries need to do 3 things. The first thing was, when we looked at about 20 countries who had produced 5-year or 10-year plans, the plans are all beautiful. But when you look at all the chapters, there is no chapter on budget. So when you have a beautiful plan, 5-year plan or 10-year plan, you don't say this is a budget to execute it. It just cannot be done. So, a plan without a budget is actually just a draft. Thou shalt never publish a draft because it's not going to be implemented. So I think that is the key. And the experience we have in Malaysia is that we have to figure out how do we get ourselves to prioritize what is really important. I do believe there's enough money to do everything. So if you don't have budget for it, instead of 10 priorities, make it 3. You'll have enough money to do 3 budgets, 3 priorities. So I really think focus is critical. And second most important thing is all countries that I saw their plans tend to be at 30,000 feet. Very high level plans, but they don't bring them down to 3 feet level. I'll give you an example. Suppose we were to say By the year 2020, a particular country need to make sure 90% of its population in the rural areas will have access to water or electricity and road. To bring that down to 3 feet, you have to say, every single year, how many roads are you going to build? How many electricity connections, house by house, are you going to build? And how much money is going to cost you? At that level of granularity, until and unless you translate the 30,000 feet to 3 feet, you have difficulty implementing. And the third one is about accountability. Accountability means you have to name the individuals who's going to run it. In the case of Malaysia, we have given iPad to all ministers, and we have KPIs for them, key performance indicators. And every Friday at 5 o'clock, they will have on the iPad a score whether they've delivered what they promised for that week. If it is delivered, it's green color. If it's not delivered, it's red. If it's partially delivered, it's green. It is yellow. Why on Fridays? Because the Prime Minister can spoil their weekend for not delivering. We also give scores to all the ministers, and all their KPIs and the performance for the year is published. So if you come to the Pamandu website, you will see which minister has 81% or 72%. The list of what he promised to do and delivered is also there. What he hasn't delivered is also there for the whole public to see. Now, the beauty about being transparent is that it causes accountability to be serious. So I believe that every 6 months, ministers must have a staff appraisal with the Prime Minister. Must have it every 6 months. And he needs to have a score. Returning to the point that was raised by my colleagues earlier on, and that is how to private sector to be involved to the sector to get results. There has been experiment medium-sized players, and we had about 500 people full-time them in laboratories for 8 weeks. And we told them, here, together with the government and the private sector, you tell us how to grow the sector, how you will invest, and then we will do. In 8 weeks during the last World Cup, the previous World Cup. And the amazing thing is that the private sector and oil and gas, they have Shell people were there, Exxon, and all the players were there. They basically told us, your fiscal regime is no good. You got to change the fiscal regime to look like this. If you do that, we will invest money. After we finished the 8 weeks, Shell invested US dollars, the group, just for oil and gas. That's the biggest EOR project in the whole of Shell Group worldwide. I give you another example. A hotel company want to build a hotel. They've said, I got the money, I got the land. All you people and the government need to do is to approve the building. That's all. Yeah, I can tell you, when we went through this laboratory, it was quite amazing what was happening on the ground, which we could not see. And so, before the work that we did, private sector investment only grew annually at 3%. Over the last 4 years, private sector investment grew by 14% annually. And so I totally believe that if you really get the private sector and lock them in the room for a full time, and you can never throw away and the motors stay there until you tell us what exactly to do. And I think if you did so, it is incredible more for the amount of things the amount of doubling that is in this thing that we did in the land labs there and the whole being done completely transferable. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your messages there. And President Ouattara, looking at your ministers along the front row, I felt a little bit of nervousness, but I'm sure you'll be picking the Malaysian minister's brains a little bit further later on that. Now bring in Steve Kaisi Mugera, Vice-President of the African Development, headquartered here in
President Ouattara, President, of course, Administrator, Madame Helen. President Becky, who, by the way, is an extremely good negotiator, as you first said. The Bush thinking points here. I'm a bit of a loss of what new I could bring to the table. But then I thought that maybe I should say something about the African narrative. And it's very important because that has changed. Just a while ago, believe it or not, Africa was this, which was exceptional for the negative reasons. It was a place where there was no growth, where there was no law, people took faith that Africa, where people don't property right, that is Africa. So I'm as a student of Africa, the African economy, but also working at the African Development Bank, to be able to say that yes, we can no longer blame it on geography, we can no longer blame it on disease, we can no longer blame it on colonial legacy, because many people have emerged. And I'm so very happy to be here representing President Kaberuka on this very important subject of emerging Africa. Now, there is a small danger here of being romantic about emergency. There have been so many things coming. President Ouattara, you were almost my boss as well. I joined the IMF the year you left the IMF. So I must say that there are all other things of the nature that we have had before. You've heard of called some other thing. Structural adjustments, really transformation also, and so on. It was very hot at one time. We supported it, we were very excited, but then it didn't quite work. So I'm very happy that today it is African governments themselves that are pushing the agenda. It's not an externally driven thing coming from Bretton Woods, not even coming from the ADB, but coming from the governments themselves, pushing the agenda, bringing their people along. So I'd like to, since everything seems to have been said, I want to just speak on 7 points. The agenda for emerging Africa, just small 7 points. The first one, which we shouldn't forget and keeps coming over and over again, that poverty is eliminated from the continent. All these things would be completely useless if we cannot eradicate poverty. And we should also make sure we are no longer a poor continent. There's gas, there's oil, there's all sorts of things. There's human capital today. There was a time when we didn't have these people, we didn't have trained engineers and so on. We have them. So let's use the resources for the African population. And importantly, let's have a debate. Let's not run away with something that we haven't tested. So let's allow African minds, let's give them space to ponder Africa's future. In other words, let's support the universities. Today, universities are extremely poorly funded. Actually, the one in Kokori here I normally visit universities for just my own sake. I used to be a university professor. I think it's very well done. The beauty is okay. Around Africa and the primary school our own development. And of course, trade is going to be very important. So we should get to relations with China, but with others, European Union, America, on favorable terms. We need to trade. That is important.
But also need to exploit the benefits of the economy. There are a lot of barriers there. If we need to benefit from, we need peace. And peace means that stop. My last point is I like to have a situation where, like in a child's story, somebody comes and says, "Hodi, koko," and then somebody says, "Who is there?" And you open the door and says, "You know, we are looking for Mr. and Mrs. Poverty." And you say, "Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Poverty, they don't live here anymore. They are long gone. You better look somewhere else." Thank you so much.
I just want to add a point. Je vais juste mettre un clavier, Excellence, si vous permettez. C'est la question du financement local. Un élément important dans l'émergence de ce qu'on a pu voir dans un certain nombre de pays, c'est le développement du système financier local. Aujourd'hui, nous avons le peu d'épargne que nous avons sur le continent, et le président Ouattara l'a bien souligné, malheureusement ne reste pas dans notre continent. Je crois que la rapport BRICS, on a beaucoup parlé également. De manière illicite ou licite, ces ressources sont. Et la raison, on se pose la question de pourquoi. Pourquoi les gens préfèrent investir dans des TB, des treasury bonds aux États-Unis qui ont un taux de rendement de très faible, au lieu de mettre de l'argent dans les instruments. Donc, il faut développer les instruments qui soient des instruments solides. Développer les bourses de valeur. On ne pourra pas avoir 50 bourses de valeur qui ont une capitalisation en Afrique qui puisse attirer des investissements. Il faut qu'on fédère ces bourses de valeur, qu'on trouve des moyens de vraiment les rendre encore plus forts. En faisant cela, ça aidera beaucoup à réduire les risques de change que beaucoup d'investisseurs font en Afrique, mais également à mobiliser l'épargne nationale pour pouvoir aider à financer. Parce que cela a été aussi une des clés du succès d'un certain nombre de pays émergents qui ont réussi à mobiliser l'épargne qui était générée dans leur pays pour l'investir dans les secteurs productifs. Je voulais juste faire ce point, Monsieur le Président.
Can I invite the panelists to come back in on any point that's caught their attention or a further point they'd like to make? President Tabo.
Thanks. I don't know what I want to thank, whether you, moderator, or President Alassane or both. But obviously, once he says I must speak, I can't not speak, because I'll get charged out of this country. But you know, I must say, moderator, that when I saw the invitation to this international conference on the emergence of Africa, it puzzled me, the title. The emergence of Africa. I said, where is Africa emerging from? From the sea, dropping from the skies, out of the fog. Until I connected this word to emergent. So I said, no, now I understand. It's an international conference on emergent Africa. Then I understand. And particularly when the President Alassane started us this morning, he actually discussed the challenges of creating this emergent Africa. In what task constitute? And all of the speakers before me have addressed this. And it seems to me that when people are talking about in emergent Africa, they are talking of and Africa emerges out of poverty, eliminating poverty, underdevelopment, all that, and reaching a certain level in terms of the size of the economy and the average size of the GDP per capita. Now you can say this has emerged. So unfortunately, I think on this panel we agree with that. And so the task becomes how do you answer this question? How are you going to ensure that you have this task that has emerged? China contributes, Shell contributes to this part. In the first instance, I think the point that was made by the last was that we need to understand what constitutes non-emergence. And therefore, what are these objectives that we need to achieve to say we are contributing to an emerging Africa, this emergent Africa? So we have to say, what do you do to eradicate poverty? Clearly, you need a source of income which would go to the population in general, which eliminates the poverty. Do the resources come from foreign aid? I think President Ouattara raised this thing earlier, or maybe the President. Or do you attract aid, which then goes into the pockets of these people? And the preference, I think, would be not aid, but our own development. If it's aid, it must come into the economic development of the country to generate the resources which we use to finance the elimination of poverty. And hence the point that was made that you therefore need a vision. You therefore need a vision. What must you do to ensure that there is this emerged Africa? Now, it's difficult to discuss these questions frankly, particularly in terms of assessing part of our history. Because I think part of what has happened in our continent is that many of the continent's political leadership, many among those, have not really been interested in achieving this goal. They will make speeches in support of this. But in practice, these are people who are interested in enriching themselves as quickly as possible. And so that's their vision of development. So the question must arise for this panel. What do we do to make sure that that doesn't happen? I think we've seen too many examples, too many cases, kind of behavior. Which has resulted in leaders being so focused on personal enrichment and under-focused on this task of of ensuring the emergence of Africa. And I think that's a challenge. There's a point that has just been referred to here concerning the illicit capital outflows, which are very large in volume relative to the African economy. And finance ministers said we've got a challenge here. While we're trying to attract capital from outside the continent, we are losing capital, which should be staying on the continent. It's not staying. So what do we do about that question? When the report has been done, the president, as you know that, and he approved it and said, let's go to implementation. How hopeful are we that there will be the kind of action that is needed, that kind of action be taken? I wouldn't discourage anybody by saying I'm not hopeful. But I'm saying I think that people will act on that matter if there's pressure on them to act. Some people. We were discussing with some of the delegates earlier today an issue that arose ending the war in South Sudan. Because that war means being away from emergence. So the issue arose, shouldn't the region, IGAD, impose sanctions on the belligerents in South Sudan, so that you don't have a situation in which the government is losing a lot of money. And the conclusion was that the will is not there on the part of, I'm talking about African countries, on the part of the African countries that can impose those sanctions. The will is not there. Because they are benefiting from the war. Because they are benefiting from the war, they are not going to act to stop the war, and therefore to open the route to emergence. So I'm only citing this as various examples, because I think we would have to go beyond what the things that I agree with. We would have to say we then have to act on the matter of the resources that are needed for this purpose of achieving this independence, this emergence. So I think it requires that thing of a vision. It also makes a firm commitment towards the ordinary people to act in such a manner that the ordinary people actually do develop. So if your assessment is that I'm gaining from the absence of sanctions, then we would impose sanctions. and therefore put on the side an instrument you can use in order to achieve the change that you want. I would say to my presidents here, it must surely be possible to engage people on a fairly widespread basis, to say, colleagues and brothers, this is a serious thing, it's a matter of war, we have to act on it. This matter about engaging. Well, let me tell you a specific story about this. We were discussing this thing with the Sudanese government, South Sudanese government, and we said to them, but why are you not talking to the SPLM in opposition? So they say to them, of course we can. But to tell you the truth, they promised us they will give us something for resisting imposition of sanctions. Now, without our knowledge, SPLM in opposition have appointed another group from the government side. And they are met. And they say we've also been met by the SPLM in opposition. And they promised us so much. It was more than what they promised the first group. They made 3 groups, each time going lower and lower. The consequence of which, the first group said, if we don't get what we were promised, we will sabotage negotiations. So you get a division within the government on this matter. Now, how do you handle all of that? So I think it's relatively easy to make a determination about what needs to happen in terms for us to achieve the emergence. It's like this 1, 2, 3, 4. And the necessary steps you need to get there are 1, 2, 3, 4. Training the people, putting in place the structures, oversight and all that. And then if you do that, it must be with a certain degree of certainty that this will be done. Honored by both the government delegation and the SPLM in opposition. I'm just using one example of this. Should we, President Ouattara, convene some process to say here is an important issue. It has this negative impact on lives of people. People are dying and getting injured and all that. Which we can end. We can't begin this process of changing what's happening so that we have development. Should we all get together and not limit just to the neighbors? Should we get together to work out a program of action? It's is a very serious issue. That President Macron has put on the agenda. In a very specific setting. But we need other decisions. If it doesn't, if we don't, no action will be taken. I think so we moderate and look at all the various things that are needed. I don't know if the U.S. sanctions on oil are still there. Those sanctions were originally against Sudan as one country. And when it divided into two, they decided part that affected South Sudan, or parts of that. At some point, of course, the South Sudanese are making a raise in this issue with the Americans, which will also raise with them. I don't know how far that has gone, because again, the lifting of these oil sanctions would release resources that become part of the resources that you need to achieve this emergence. Should we not be talking? So there are a number of issues, Presidents, that I think we need to take to the next step of working, elaborating a program of action to deal with this matter. Otherwise, I think it will move anywhere. Thanks.
Can I jump in?
President Ouattara is going to come back, and then
Je voulais juste remercier tous ceux qui sont intervenus. Mais également, je crois que le ministre de la Malaisie nous a donné la solution, surtout avec toutes les questions que pose le président Kaberuka, qui on va enfermer tout le monde ici pendant une semaine. Donc, comme ça, pour avoir... Plus sérieusement, évidemment, je comprends les préoccupations évoquées par le président Kaberuka. Il y a 2 ans, nous étions ensemble avec le Nigeria, l'Afrique du Sud et l'Éthiopie, la Côte d'Ivoire pour essayer mais également le continent. On va parler demain. Aura l'occasion d'en parler au cours de la prochaine séance. Que c'est bien ce que nous essayons de faire pour parvenir à construire
de l'État. Sur l'électricité, je dis, sur le si vous voulez encore. Donc, voilà la question de voilà, on va aller appuyer le président, je m'en avais et pour dire simplement que nous sommes très ouverts, nous sommes pour la transparence, mais il faut que le contrat soit plus équitable.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think there's always a presidents, President Becky, our guests from China, Malaysia, World Bank, African Development Bank, a wide range of inputs. President Becky and others have made a very strong point, no emergence without back to that rule of law, governance, stability. President Ouattara, your own country's history of a decade or so of conflict. You're on the track again because peace and security has been re-established and rule of law and effective governance. So from there, we can proceed to the very clear points that you set out in your opening statement, and President Saad set out about steps which will positively then accelerate emergence. Thank you, Malaysian Minister, for your very clear points about plans must have budgets or they're just a draft. You need focus and prioritisation, and you need KPIs. Very, very, very critical. I think the points made about changing the narrative are critical. And I think the narrative around Africa has by and large changed South Sudan, as President Mbeki's articulated. We'll be the happier for that. I think we should now draw to a close. Thank all panelists. Invite people to have their lunch because there are sessions this afternoon to take up the issues that have been raised. So once again, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. That's good. That's good.